Welcome to episode 77 of the Tyre Recycling Podcast. As promised, this episode is the second in our two-part series dedicated to the upcoming Round Trip 2025 Tyre and Conveyor Belt Recycling Summit, jointly organised by Tyre Stewardship Australia and Tyrewise in New Zealand. The summit will bring together leading voices from across Australia and New Zealand for their very first conference dedicated entirely to tyre and conveyor belt recycling. The first episode saw us talk to Adele Rose, the CEO of Tyrewise. And in that episode, Adele talked to us about her expectations for this landmark event, whilst offering insights into the early progress of New Zealand's tyre recycling scheme. Today, though, we speak to Lina Goodman, the CEO of Tyre Stewardship Australia, as we similarly touch upon the objectives and aims for the summit from their perspective, as well as some points of interest regarding the tyre recycling scene in Australia, such as the recent publication of their latest material flow analysis report called Are We There Yet? So let's dive into our conversation with Lina Goodman. Okay, so we're now here with Lina Goodman, the CEO of Tyre Stewardship Australia. Lina, how are you doing? And it's nice to meet you.
Thank you. It's wonderful to meet you too.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, we're 2 months away now from the summit, and I've touched upon it in the introduction and our conversation with Adele, but this is the first time that TSA and Tyrewise have paired up to organize a tire recycling summit. So, how has this partnership come about, and is this a one-off, or you're expecting this summit to happen more frequently in the future?
Mm. Yeah, look, I'm actually really excited about the summit. It is the first time TSA has pulled together an event like this as well. Collaborating with Tyrewise isn't just a natural fit. We're two very different stewardship schemes and we're at very different parts of our life cycle. And that differences is actually going to bring us together to collaborate on some really great topics and projects. TSA is voluntary. We've been around for 10 or plus years. New Zealand is very new. Taiwan is very new, but they're mandatory. And I think this should be a bit of a showcase because more stewardship schemes around the world should come together. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We've got so much to learn from them because they've gone through that regulatory process. And we've certainly got a lot to give to them too in the form of programs and learnings and research. We'd love for them to take on board a lot of the research we've done because we want to expedite the use of tie-derived material in different markets. So I think it's going to be a good collaboration. Will this happen annually? Look, let's see how this first one goes. We're certainly bringing a lot of people together, a lot of international speakers, really interesting. And I'd love to get the pulse of the industry. Let's hear what the tyre recyclers and collectors have to say. Was it useful? And if it is, we'll certainly back it up again. Whether it's annual, I'm not sure, but certainly want to hear industry. And if it's something that's valuable to them, I can't see why we wouldn't do it again.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it might be that once a year's, yeah, doing it annually is a little bit too much. Maybe every other year might be best. But as you say, you've got to do it for the first time, get that feedback, and
Yeah.
go from there. Really.
Mm,
Um, Now the name of the summit is the Round Trip Tyre and Conveyor Belt Recycling Summit. So I obviously suggest not just to focus on tyre recycling, but the conveyor belt sector too.
mm,
So obviously, from my understanding, the conveyor belt sector is probably more of an Australia focus.
mm.
So how big is the conveyor belt sector in Australia? And also, is there a need to focus on belting when there's such a big challenge already in dealing with OTR tires?
Mm. Um, what's interesting is that the conversation around conveyor belts was largely driven by those who are consuming conveyor belts. So, in conversations with mining companies, they have a problem that is equally as bad as OTR tires is conveyor belts, and we couldn't leave them out of the conversation. What is important is that the tyre recyclers and collectors that would be supporting mining companies to collect their OTR tyres have started to lean in and provide similar services for conveyor belts. And we're a stewardship scheme that is visiting tyre recyclers and we're auditing them and we're providing accreditation. So it's a bit of a misstep for us to turn a blind eye for something that is clearly a need for collection by the recyclers, a problem for mining companies. And it's a bit of a service that we're offering. And I think
Mhm.
that that's been valuable. What TSA is not doing is we're not spending any of our funds to increase market development opportunities for conveyor belts. What we're doing is bringing conveyor belts along the ride for conversation.
Mm.
And when it comes to data, well, we don't know a lot. We don't really know a lot. I think the last report we did, which was the tipping the balance report, indicated that there could be something between 60,000 and 85,000 tonnes of end of life conveyor belts each year, but we're not sure.
Mm.
So, like I said, I think this is about the mining companies who have a problem with conveyor belts need to find a home for it, and we're bringing it along the journey for conversation. It's just like tagging along, and I think that recyclers are really leaning in and supporting.
Absolutely. Are you expecting to get quite a few some good findings and insights then from the summit off bringing these different companies together specifically with a focus on conveyor belts then?
Well, the focus is largely on
Mm.
tyres, and
Yeah.
as it should be, because that
Mm.
is the biggest problem, and that's what we're here to do, both TSA and Tyrewise. I feel that what we'll start to learn is what can be done with conveyor belts, and whether that
Yeah.
happens within the summit and within the conversations within the summit, or it actually might happen organically as
Yeah.
people are visiting and talking. We're going to hear from some technology providers around what they're doing with conveyor belts at the moment in terms of the recovery process and the recycling process. And I think that that'll start to open up an opportunity for, can we utilize conveyor belt manufacturing as an opportunity for end of life tire material? I'm not sure. Can we utilize tire recycling equipment to manage conveyor belt recycling as well? These are all the things that I think
Mm.
will lend itself to really good conversation at the summit.
Absolutely. You not never know where those conversations might lead in
Mm.
that regard. And obviously with these events, it's always a great opportunity to bring together stakeholders from across the spectrum. So, from your perspective at TSA, are there any specific policy or regulatory frameworks or markets that you're looking to advance at the summit?
Yeah, so I think we don't have to hide that TSA has forever and a day wanted a regulatory arrangement for its scheme, but it's not actually about us.
Mhm.
This summit is not about us advancing for a regulated scheme. This summit is all about finding markets for materials when they reach end of life. So, how can we get more rubber related materials into infrastructure projects? How can we create markets? What do we need to do? What's holding us back? And these are the conversations that I'm hoping are going to come out of the various panel discussions. So we're going to be listening to roads manufacturers. We're going to hear from them. Why can't we put more material in roads?
Mm.
We know that the recyclers are ready, they have the ability to provide it. So we need to know from them. We've got alternate fuel providers. How is it that we can get more tire-derived material into their applications? So for us, it's really trying to drive more onshore consumption, more
Mm.
circular consumption of tire-derived material. I think that's always a good conversation to have.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I suppose it's the end goal for a lot of countries, right? To drive that onshore demand and onshore consumption, so that we're not sending we've seen in the UK, like the example of sending a lot of our tires
Mm,
to India. The goal is that we're dealing with our own waste, and I suppose
mm.
in that regard, summits like this can definitely help to potentially impulse demand for these type of projects.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for.
Mm, absolutely. And so, just moving away from the summit, you obviously TSA recently released its report,
Mm,
material recovery report.
and that showed a large percentage of ELTs going to energy recovery.
Mm.
So, from TSA's perspective, do you want to see like improved levels of material recycling, and how are you planning to achieve this? And also, how does events such as the summit help to deliver that?
Mm. Firstly, that report it shines a light on the data,
Mm,
and seeing and knowing the data is really valuable because it helps us navigate where are we going and how have we gone. Now, we might be sending a lot of material to our energy recovery,
mm,
not dissimilar to anyone around the world that is doing very similar processes to energy recovery. But what is what is encouraging is that we're seeing a lot of material going to uh, circular outcomes and recycling and roads and other markets that we are doing here in Australia. When I first started here, I think it was 16,000, 20,000 tons. We're now at 33, 40,000 tons of material. That's excellent.
mm,
Um, the energy recovery is a necessary market for material because the alternative is stockpiling, landfilling. So
yeah.
we need to start building the markets to encourage greater circularity, to encourage more investment or more revenue from product use of tyre-derived material that generates
Mm,
greater level of revenue for recyclers and collectors. So whilst energy recovery is and has been a necessary pathway, and no doubt will be for a long time to come, I want to start seeing that dial of material being used for recycling grow. And
mm,
that's what we're here for. We
yeah.
really need to start, and that takes time.
Mm,
That takes time. It takes these summits, it takes conversations and hard conversations because it is much harder to for a recycler to commit to producing a material for recycling outlets than it is for
mm.
energy recovery outlets. And as a scheme, what role do we play to facilitate that so that those markets can flourish?
Absolutely. I think nowadays when we have problems, we sort of expect things to be resolved instantly and very quickly in the
Mm,
24/7 world. And big issues such as, end of life tire generation, it is not a simple,
no.
click your fingers and this is going to be resolved. It takes, as you said, a lot of conversations, a lot of these types of events to bring different
Mm,
people together to come up with long-term solutions.
mm.
It's yeah, I do find it interesting. We people think how quickly these things can be resolved when it's just not really the
What's
case.
what's interesting when you look at the data is there is a lot of volume going to energy recovery in that
Mm,
uh, passenger tire space, which is understandable because of the quality of the material. When you look at the same data and you look at the off the road volume, the OTR volume, what you see is that whilst a lot of it is buried in pit, what
mm,
is collected is going to uh, recycling rather than energy recovery. That's a good sign. And that's
mm,
a kind of sign that we hope is a trend that remains for that material to go into recycling outlets. And
mm.
it should, because of the quality of the product, high natural rubber, it lends itself to greater circular outcomes. And we understand why passenger tires has gone down the energy recovery path.
Absolutely. And moving on, obviously we've already touched on it with regards to Tyrewise being a mandatory scheme and
Mm.
TSA being voluntary. We've already briefly spoke on it. But would TSA support a move towards a mandatory scheme like New Zealand? And would that be workable?
We absolutely need to move to a mandatory
Mm,
scheme. Is the New Zealand model the right model for Australia? I'm not sure. And that's why we need the government to do a cost benefit analysis
mm,
because it's through that cost benefit analysis that details what is fit for purpose for us. It might be a combination, but there is certainly a few things that absolutely need to be addressed. And that is we have ties entering our country and those imports are not contributing to a scheme. And we are 25 cents.
mm.
it's not expensive. And that volume, what we're seeing is volume of tyres is growing in Australia. And so free riders aren't participating. That is really the first, for me, that is the first and foremost that has to be addressed. Secondly, unfortunately, because there is a buck to be made by opportunistic collectors, they're out there collecting from tyre mechanics, fitters and retail, and then dumping it. We had a scenario only this week. The National Park in Queensland had some 500 tyres dumped there. Well, if there was a mandatory scheme, rogue operators should never be allowed to capitalize on this. And that needs to be addressed. And then the last piece is this ability to step in and support the use of drum rubber and other tyre-derived material in advanced manufacturing. And doing it alone without regulatory policy stepping in hasn't happened. In order for that to happen, it needs to step in so that advanced manufacturing can be supported by a stewardship scheme.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking obviously Australia, such a big country, and obviously there's big logistical issues regarding tyre recycling, especially outside of Victoria and New South Wales. How do you as TSA persuade mining companies that there's better solutions than burying tyres at the moment?
Yeah. So we work pretty closely with the mining industry to bring to them the collectors and recyclers have invested in technology that can now help them. Now, when I think about how am I going to persuade mining companies, well, perhaps our mind needs to shift in how am I going to persuade government to change licensing conditions so that mining companies can no longer bury in pit for free. And I think that's where the conversation needs to lie. Governments have policies and licensing conditions that allow this practice to happen, and they allow this practice to happen at no cost to mining industry. Now, no other waste industry gets the same free burial opportunity. So if we want to change, we really need government to start considering changing the licensing conditions that allows this practice to happen in the first instance.
Absolutely.
And then I think with that change, we might see some material flow into recyclers who have invested so much money to deal with this material.
Absolutely. Then hopefully you'll see some good conversations from that arrive at the summit too. And bringing it back round finally to the summit, what is your key message that you'd like to share with businesses, governments, and associations from both Australia and New Zealand to take part and attend the summit?
Well, it's going to be the first time where we can hear from a whole range of different international technology providers in the one space. We will be hearing from CircTech. We will be hearing from Viva Energy. We will be hearing from Piave Tyres. We'll be hearing from Rubberjet, Rubber Conversions. This is the first time all these organisations in the one place, coupled with the current onshore recyclers and collectors, TyreCycle, CTS Recycling, AutoCycle, Michelin will be participating, Bridgestone will be participating. For me, it's a no-brainer to have everyone of this calibre in the one room. What a wonderful learning opportunity. So I encourage anyone who's interested to come along, because you're not going to get this opportunity again for this caliber of presenters.
No, absolutely. I said I'm very much looking forward to it as well, because I think for me, I'm definitely looking forward to learning a lot. I learn a lot of you and our editor, but for me, I think it's going to be a fantastic opportunity to learn a lot about tyre recycling in general, but also about the specificities of the Australian and New Zealand markets.
Wonderful. Thank you. We look forward to you coming along.
Thank you for joining us for this interview with Lina Goodman from Tyre Stewardship Australia. The Round Trip 2025 Tyre and Conveyor Belt Recycling Summit will be held on the 15th to the 16th of October in Melbourne, Australia, as we bring together some of the most influential names in the tyre recycling industry. Among the keynote participants will be Paul Kenyon of the BBC, who recently investigated a major waste tyre scandal in the United Kingdom. He will be joined by leading figures in tyre recycling, including Tommaso Verri from the Rubber Jet Group and Francesco Di Pero from Rubber Conversion. For more details about the summit, you'll find the Eventbrite link in the video description. Thanks again for watching, and be sure to tune in next time